everyone, thank you for joining us today. Today we have the full breakdown of Bring Her Back. If you like these types of videos, please like, share and subscribe to our channel to see more of these videos released every single week. Anyway, let's get straight into it. Enjoy. The film opens on a strange occult ritual where a naked man hangs a woman before embracing her, while someone recites a passage from an old book. It's a quick scene, but it does a well enough job to establish what to expect from this film. We then jump cut to Piper, a young girl who is visually impaired, waiting at a bus stop. Nearby are a group of chatty girls, and Piper, eager to have some friends, tries to join in on the conversation. Now, for those of you who have never interacted with someone who has blindness, they often wear glasses to hide their eyes because it bothers some people that their eyes can't focus and often dart around or roll upwards. Well, being immature young girls, you already know that as soon as Piper addresses them, they begin sniggering and mocking her. That is, until her stepbrother shows up. Piper tries to joke that he's a strange man kidnapping her, but the girls just think she's even weirder for that and board the bus, continuing to mock her. Andy, Piper's stepbrother, walks her home. Later that same day, while Andy is working on his car, Piper screams for him. There was a loud noise in the bathroom and now Dad isn't answering. Using a screwdriver, Andy breaks in and their father is lying naked on the floor of the shower, dead. Piper howls with sadness and Andy tries his best to comfort her. Turns out the father had recently gone through chemotherapy, and due to complications from that, he suffered a stroke which killed him. Ooh, that's deep. Andy tells Piper that the sound she hears, a plane flying over her head, is the sound of her father's soul heading to heaven. It's so cute, bless him. The kids, of course, then put into the foster system, which at first they want to split up the siblings because when Andy was 8, he was apparently quite the mischievous child. But due to the insistence from Piper that she needs him, the agent says that she will talk to Laura, the foster parent, and see what she can work out. Later, the truth will be revealed that it wasn't really because of Andy's troubled past that Laura didn't want him, but something much darker. I want to note though that Piper isn't totally blind. She can see shapes and colours, so kind of like looking through some thick wavy glass where you can't make out any details but you know that objects and people are there. There's an Instagram account I follow called Kitty is Blind who is afflicted by the same kind of blindness. Well, we cut to Andy driving Piper up to their new home, and while admiring the landscape, he accidentally drives over a short stone wall around a flower bed. The two are definitely nervous. Inside the house, there's a loud techno-pop music blasting, and Laura yells from the kitchen that the door is open. The siblings walk in and Laura welcomes them warmly, even snapping a selfie with them right away. She definitely seems to be more excited to meet Piper, kind of ignoring that Andy's even there. Andy notices that the edges of the carpet have all been taped down and asks if that is prep for Piper, but Laura reveals she used to have a blind daughter herself, who drowned years prior. The two siblings continue to explore the house, checking out the backyard, where they see the pool, which has now been completely drained of water. Here they meet Oliver, Laura's other adopted child, just standing in the middle. Laura's cat freaks out around him and Oliver just stands there, turning to look at Andy and Piper and just staring at them with a vacant expression. Oliver is selectively mute, meaning he can speak but he just doesn't, and Laura says that's been the case ever since he witnessed Laura's daughter Kathy drown. Later in the day, Laura has a sit down with Andy, revealing she used to be a counsellor. Andy's applying for guardianship and Laura is supposed to be evaluating his capability, but she of course has ulterior motives. her goal being to keep Piper for herself. When Andy's back is turned, she goes for his phone, but he catches her and snatches it back. And Laura then overreacts as if he was about to beat her or something, already setting up that she is going to do something heinous and blame it on him just to get rid of him. Laura then goes to spy on Piper in this really stalkery, creepy shot, watching her all the way until nightfall, while Oliver waits slightly behind her, also just creepily staring. She then heads to her office and puts in a VHS tape which shows a ritual of some kind being performed, and opens a drawer with a photo of her dead daughter, touching it softly. Andy can't sleep and looks out the window and sees Laura and Oliver walking out into the backyard and disappearing into the night. Strange things are definitely afoot. The next morning we see Laura in the empty pool, painting over some of the cracks and just staring into what used to be the deep end. She wakes the kids and we see that Andy has accidentally wet the bed, so he quickly washes his clothes, then goes to take a shower. Still a bit traumatised from how their dad died, he can't bring himself to go in and has flashes of that day trying to perform CPR. A few hours later and the siblings attend their father's funeral. Andy can't bring himself to look at the open casket, but Piper touches the side of her father's face and says goodbye. When they go out for the fresh air, we see Laura cut off some of the father's hair and put it in her pocket. She then causes trouble between Andy and Piper by pointing out that Andy didn't look at him while he was in there, even though he told Piper that he looked good and the funeral directors had done a good job. The seeds of distrust are slowly being sown. Ooh, don't we hate this woman already? We cut to Oliver, who has been left home alone. The cat is afraid of him, but also recognises him, as if they were once very close, but now something strange is going on. Oliver is beating his hands against the window until it smashes, and then walks out into the garden, bleeding from the cuts all over his hand. He then goes to a locked shed deep in the backyard and begins banging hard against the door, desperately trying to get inside. The chickens make some noise which distracts him, and he goes over to the coop and begins to grab at the fence, getting angry. Wow. I want to point out that a lot of the things Laura says are actual techniques in dealing with the stages of grief and loss, but the way she forces Andy to do them and how to do them are highly inappropriate and very intensely wrong. If she was a counsellor at any point, she has strayed far from her principles, like she's had some kind of nervous breakdown and become cruel. Anyway, the new family head back home, and to cheer them up, Laura throws a little impromptu party. They get sloshed, playing some drinking games, and weirdly enough, no one notices Oliver just standing in the backyard, still bloody. Laura gets Andy really drunk, even encouraging Piper to drink as well, and then a dance party kicks off. Again, while they all seem like a genuine way to help the kids deal with their loss and get all these emotions out, there is definitely something else going on. At the end of the night, Piper is passed out and Andy thanks Laura for helping them. She says she understands as she herself went through losing someone, and the two have a heart-to-heart while sitting back to back. Andy asks Laura how she coped with it, and Laura tells him a heartbreaking tale of the events she went through. She tells him she would give anything, absolutely anything, to hear Kathy call her mom one more time. Andy spills some of his own dark secrets from his past. That when Andy's father married Piper, he was a little out of control. He got into trouble at school and even hit Piper once, but that wasn't out of jealousy. He wanted Piper and her mom to leave because when Andy was little, his father used to abuse him, and he wanted to spare her from that. Luckily, Andy's father never did touch Piper in that way. Thank fuck. Really sad for Andy. Andy passes out in bed, and then we see Laura go to the bathroom. She squats over a measuring cup and pisses in it. Cheeky bitch. She then goes into Andy's room, pours the pee into his pants, uses his camera to take some incriminating photos, but before she can delete stuff off his phone, she interrupted by the cat screaming in the backyard. It's Oliver, and he's walking into the empty pool, clutching the cat tightly, and she quickly grabs him and puts him in the bath. She tells him she knows he's hungry, but he'll have to wait for a bit. She then says she knows he's in there. Even she can't see him just yet. The water in the sink turns on, boiling hot, and the mirror shatters. Ooh, things are getting interesting. Andy still can't bring himself to shower, and he washes himself outside with the hose. Oliver observes this in his strange, disconnected way and kills a fly eating it. Andy goes to check on him, offering to make him some lunch while Laura's out of the house. He cuts some fruit while trying to talk to him when Ollie grabs a knife and begins chewing on it, blade side up, breaking some teeth. Andy panics and tries to get Oliver to the car to bring him to the hospital, but as soon as he gets him outside and across that salt line, the kid freaks out completely and begins speaking. He begs Andy for help, but before Andy can ask any question, Laura shows up and screams at him, "Why is he outside? No, no, no," and rushes to get him back over the line of salt surrounding the house. If you've picked up on it, then you can guess that Oliver is being used as a vessel to keep someone's soul inside. And once he crossed that salt, it's forced the invading soul out, and now Laura has to re-enchant him, playing that old VHS tape of the ritual we saw earlier. She even feeds him those hairs she cut off the sibling's dead father. It's all very fucked. Very, very fucked. Andy tries to overcome his fear and goes to take another shower to wash off the blood. While he's in there, he's visited by his dead father. This of course freaks him out and he tries to flee, slipping on a puddle of water and knocking himself out. Just before losing consciousness, his dead father says to him, "She'll die in the rain." He wakes up and he's in the hospital, and guess what? It's raining pretty hard and he goes absolutely just loses his shit, fighting to get free from the gurney. Meanwhile, back at the house, Piper is worried about her brother, using text-to-speech to try and send him messages which all go unanswered. She seeks comfort with Laura, who is watching old home videos of her former daughter Kathy. The two share an actual touching moment here that's still overshadowed by the sinister cloud, however. We also watch a glimpse of Oliver before Kathy's death, and he had a full head of curly red hair and a happy personality, far from the empty shell he is now. He also looks much taller, with vastly different facial features. That's interesting. The next day, Laura and Piper come to visit Andy, and he tells Laura to not let Piper out in the rain, that he was visited by his father, and tells her what happened, but she dismisses this as trauma from the fact that his father died in the shower. But she promises to keep Piper inside, but of course this is a straight up lie, and as soon as Laura returns home, she takes Piper outside into the rain to frolic and dance, all while being watched by Oliver from his bedroom window. She then takes Piper into the locked building in the backyard, and it's filled with Kathy's old stuff. She gives Piper a sweater, and it was actually Kathy's favourite in fact, and even ties her hair back the way that Kathy used to. Laura asks Piper if she'd like to stay here permanently after Andy turns 18, but Piper says she's really looking forward to living with her brother on her own, but should visit of course whenever she can. The two are then interrupted by Ollie, and we see why he has been trying to get into there. In a big freezer lies the body of Kathy, Basically, once the ritual is complete and Kathy's soul is put into Piper, the demon or whatever thing is inside Oliver gets to eat Kathy's corpse. Yum. Andy is absolutely haunted by what he saw and can't stop thinking of the past, as well as the odd things that have been happening lately. We get another scene of Laura watching old VHS tapes of the ritual with Oliver, and we watch as the corpse eater devours its victims, and a soul is then transferred into a third body, coming back from the dead. However, it never shows what happens to the corpse eater after the ritual has been completed, and I have a feeling that it doesn't quietly go back to where it came from. Laura sprays herself with Andy's body spray and then enters Piper's room and creepily combs through her hair, before taking a deep breath and then punching her in the face. Piper wakes up screaming, and of course, because of how Laura has been manipulating the events, she blames a black eye on Andy. Oliver is all kinds of messed up looking, and Laura goes on the attack, trying to take the phone from Andy when he snaps a picture of Oliver, who is pretending to be her by Andy. Since Piper can't see what's going on, all she has are their sounds, and she begins to think Andy is doing everything and begs him to stop. But he's not actually doing anything. Things are getting intense when he tries to defend himself, but instead Andy says something to Piper that she knows he's telling the truth, and storms out the house, driving down to the foster care office. Here he notices a poster for a missing boy, Connor, and well, he looks an awful lot like Ollie, if his head had been shaved. The puzzle pieces are starting to finally fit. Meanwhile, Laura knows she's under the gun and needs to get this ritual done as soon as possible. So she packs up some things and whisks Piper off to an old school. Back at the office, Andy is demanding the cops be called to Laura's house, but it seems like Laura has been making calls of her own, manipulating events to make Andy seem like a violent offender. Not to mention, Laura used to work there for over 20 years, and so presumably, before her daughter's death, she was actually great at her job, and truly did love children, and did right by them. But now, that knowledge only aids her in gaming the system, able to spin stuff in her own favour. While Piper is off at the school thing, Laura returns home to a house that's been absolutely trashed. She finds Ollie in the kitchen trying to eat a plastic milk jug covered in blood and dirt. His head has also become all kinds of misshapen, and well, he straight up looks deranged, like a little psycho demon creature. Ollie attacks her, trying to bite her, ripping out some of her hair. He then bites into her wrist and Laura shoves him off, running into the back of the house and locking herself into her bedroom. Ollie chases after her and bangs on the door, just as she passes out. Back at the office, Andy has calmed down and explains about the missing boy poster. He reveals that there's a boy in the house called Oliver. That is most definitely actually this Connor kid. The social worker remarks that Oliver was the name of her nephew, a little red-haired boy. At first, she wants to call Laura, but Andy convinces her to just drive up there with him and check for herself. This part is frustrating to me, because why not just call the cops? I mean, I'm not familiar with Australian laws, but here in the US, if a kid comes in screaming about a child being kidnapped and abused and all that, the cops at least perform a welfare check. We cut back to the house and the film is now entering its full-on body horror mode, and Ollie is literally biting into the wood top of a kitchen island, breaking his teeth. If you're at all squeamish, I would recommend covering your eyes for these next bits. But if you came for the gore, here's where things really ramp up. Laura wakes up in her room and tries to bandage up her bite wound. Ollie is now eating himself, ripping off his own skin. Keenly aware that this ritual is getting away from her, Laura is desperate. Ollie has now moved outside to stare at the pool. His eyes fully demonic now. Using her own blood, Laura draws a circle on the window, and it attracts Ollie to it. who stares through it deeply into Laura's eyes. She puts her forehead to the glass and he mimics her, and it seems to momentarily calm him down, enough for her to regain control. She takes him into the shed and opens the freezer, and Ollie does what he's been wanting to do and finally gets a taste of poor Kathy. Laura lets out a haunting wailing scream as she watches. We then cut to Piper, who is playing some games with other special needs children. Meanwhile, Andy and the social worker are heading to Laura's while Andy leaves a detailed message on Piper's voicemail. Unbeknown to him though, Laura has Piper's phone and has intercepted the call. She's now got to work fast, clean up the house and make everything look normal. Which of course she manages to pull off. While the social worker goes inside to do a house check and talk with Laura, Andy sneaks around the back and follows a stray chicken, only to discover a few chicken corpses half devoured and scattered about. He followed the trail of dead chickens and they lead him directly to a shed. He manages to break in and catches Ollie in the act of eating Kathy. Andy begins hollering for the social worker, who thankfully hears him and becomes curious. Laura grabs her arm though and starts to rumble about how she's doing something special for Kathy and she shouldn't go out there. "We can bring her back, I have found a way," she tells her. But the social worker is now finally alarmed and becoming aware of what's happening. I'm sure she wishes she would have brought police back up now, but Laura restrains the social worker, screaming at her about how she needs to complete this ritual and that it's working. The social worker gets outside and Andy takes her to the shed, where she also witnesses Ollie eating the corpse. The two then have to make a run for it to the car, but beep beep, here comes Laura and runs them both over with her truck. Andy is majorly injured and the social worker is dead. Laura gets out of the car and walks over to Andy and then holds his face down in a puddle, drowning him. She then goes to the backyard and begins filling up the pool. The reason she does this is according to the ritual, in order to make a vessel, the person has to die in the same way the one you wish to bring back. So since Kathy drowned in the pool, Piper too needs to drown. Laura heads to the school and picks up Piper, putting on her "everything is fantastic" persona. However, before they can leave, a woman running the activities approaches Laura and wishes to ask about Piper's black eye. Laura, fully on edge, hisses back at the woman to leave her be and grabs Piper's wrist, storming out with her. When the two arrive back home, the floor is covered in streaks of blood. Laura goes out to get prepared while Piper begins to change out of her wet sweater, when she hears Andy's voice calling to her from upstairs. Curious, she goes to investigate. We quick cut to Laura, who sees that Oliver has dragged Andy's body inside and eaten his face. Fuck. The ritual has already begun. Is Andy's soul now inside Oliver, who is actually Connor? When Piper gets upstairs, she follows the voice to Ollie's room and asks him why he's in the room, seeing only a vague outline of a human shape. Something smells quite foul though, and Piper reaches a hand out to Ollie, who makes a gargling demonic sound. At this point, I was cringing up my whole body because I was so sure he was about to take a bite out of her or something. Ugh. The tension is so thick right now. Before she can really touch Ollie, however, and see how messed up he is, Laura interrupts her by telling her that's just Ollie and that her brother is actually downstairs. Piper isn't fully buying it though. She for sure heard his voice coming out of Ollie, if that's who is really standing beside her. At this point, Ollie looks like one of those rage-infected people from the 28 Days franchise. Some glass breaks, which momentarily distracts Laura, and Piper makes a break for it, ducking into the bathroom and locking herself in. Here she finds her brother's dead body and feels his face, and she knows he's dead. Laura fetches some keys and gets into the bathroom, and Piper confronts her. But Laura has a story cooked up already, telling her that Andy had an accident. But then she loses her grip with reality and tells Piper the story of the Angel of Resurrection. You know, man, Piper's had it rough enough already. Thankfully, Piper is no dumbass though, and the moment the words "I'm going to drown you in the pool" leave Laura's lips, Piper cracks her in the face with some random bathroom items, and then two fight it out, and Piper manages to get away, but only for a short while, due to her inability to see. She runs full speed into a metal pole and knocks herself out, bless her. Laura grabs her by the ankles and begins to drag her out of the pool. Ollie, with a bloated stomach filled with human remains, is already waiting there. He walks down into the pool while Laura begins to recite some ancient words. She pushes Piper into the water and climbs in after, floating her over to Ollie, and then, with one last sigh of breath, pushes Piper under. Piper snaps to and begins to struggle, managing to service and take a big breath of air. Ollie is going into some kind of trance, and something is literally crawling up out of his throat. Laura musters all her strength and holds Piper down, while Ollie saunters over, but then suddenly, Laura has a vision of Kathy on the day she hit her head and drowned, and it's enough for Piper to come up and get some air again, repeating the words, "Mom, please." Hearing this from Piper, something she's been desperately wanting to hear from her own daughter, hits Laura deep in her feelings. She can't go through with it after all. So what now? Demon Ollie looks pissed and hungry. Piper climbs out of the pool and tries to make a run for it, but Ollie chases after her. That's his meal after all. Piper slips and falls out of the shed, but manages to make it over to the salt line and runs off into the wood. Ollie begins puking up some black bile and watches her when he spots a missing child poster that Andy had. Something deep inside of him begins to take over, and he stares at the salt line. Laura crawls into the shed and looks over her daughter's corpse, remembering the good old days, and says her goodbyes. She then rips open her wound and begins bleeding profusely. Ollie has gone over the salt line and is writhing on the ground, screaming. Laura grabs the corpse of Kathy and begins to drag her out of the shed and over to Ollie. Someone found Piper and brought her to the police, which, when she tells her story, they head to Laura's house. Here, they find Ollie, who in reality is actually Connor, and has regained his consciousness, no longer possessed by the demonic entity. As the police search the rest of the grounds, they find Laura and her daughter Kathy floating in the pool. Whew. So in the end, Laura couldn't do it and finally comes to terms with her own grief and chooses to be with her in her own way. Since the pact was broken, the demon no longer required its own vessel and just left. So at least there's a happy-ish ending. This film was utterly traumatizing to the characters involved. I really cannot see any of the survivors leading a happy, normal life after this. However, it does seem that had Laura gone through with it, the ritual would have worked. So given all the tapes and stuff she had, it's possible there may be a sequel in the future, where someone actually completes it. I guess we'll find out. It could be Piper trying to get her brother back. But for the while, the director duo is now working on bringing Talk to Me, the sequel to their 2023 smash hit. So what do you guys think? If it were possible to bring someone back, would you be able to do it? Let us know in the comments below. We would love to hear from you. I want to thank you for checking out the video. Make sure to give it a like, share and subscribe to our channel. We drop reviews and breakdowns every single week, as well as other videos, so there's plenty of content to enjoy. I've been your host Sarah. I appreciate you being here with me today. I hope you have a gorgeous day and take care everyone. Goodbye.